The 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska. This is the N Report Husker Show.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio alongside Sports Director Kevin Sjuts. Kevin, this is the N Report Husker Show. It's been since May of 22 that we recorded a podcast. And since we've gotten some upgraded kind of toys here, we knew we wanted to kind of restart this, bring this back. And so welcome to kind of, again, the inaugural re-debut of the N Report Husker podcast.
2023 Nebraska football season is set to begin this week. The Huskers travel up to Minneapolis to take on the Golden Gophers, which will kick off the Matt Rhule era. So what a better time to get talking some Huskers.
So, again, for everyone, joining us, you can stream this live. We're live right now on 1011 streaming platforms, again, including 1011 Now live stream on the website, Roku app, Fire TV app, YouTube, everywhere. You can obviously watch on demand afterwards when this is done.
Can you say that in your sleep now, too?
Basically, yeah.
Roku,
Apple TV, Fire TV, Android TV, Samsung TV.
Yeah.
There's so many TVs now. It's really hard to keep up with all of the new ones. And then also you can listen on wherever you get your podcasts as well. Again, Kevin Sjuts and Chase Madison are very busy, so we're going to try and use their time judiciously today. We're going to go ahead and bring in Chase Madison right now. He's joining from the sports office. Chase, how you doing all the way over there?
Yeah, not too far away, but I'm doing well, and it is a busy time of year, a very busy week of all of the Huskers.
It is.
In it.
It is, and there's a lot to talk about for the next couple days. My first question I want to ask both of you, Kevin, I'm going to start with you, is, again, you've been covering the team for a long time. As a fan, I kind of have this emotion of anxiousness, nervousness, excitement, kind of mixed with maybe some dread. What kind of emotions do you feel as we kind of get ready for a season opener?
Let's just go. I'm kind of tired already. That's very weird to say out loud.
Well, we started this on July 31st.
I feel like I had fall camp fatigue about 3 weeks ago. So just anxious to see the team, especially considering all the new pieces that are a part of this 2023 Huskers team. New head coach, new coaching staff. There's only one retained coach in Donovan Raiola. And Nebraska has over 60 newcomers on the roster this year. So curious just to see them in a Husker uniform and then how they fit the new offensive and defensive schemes. So there are so many mysteries, and I guess that's why I say let's go. Let's get it started.
Let's get it
Thursday
done.
Cannot come soon enough.
No, it can't. Chase, what about you? Again, this is your first season covering the Huskers. What kind of emotions have you been feeling, again, following the team the last few weeks? But finally, we get to play some meaningful football.
Yeah, it's I'm a set of fresh eyes, but also Coach Rhule is new to coaching the Huskers, and I think he's reviving some old traditions, but bringing his own flair to the head coaching role of a prestigious program that has a lot of respect. But I also think people are Kevin said let's go, and people want to see the Huskers play. Obviously, I think there's some leniency with Coach Rhule and just some of the things that he's done already. People kind of respect. But, when they hit the field in Minnesota this upcoming week, that's when really we get to start to see the team and kind of what this team might look like. There's a lot of questions unanswered still.
Yeah, again, we've said multiple times, I think, that so far Rhule has won the offseason. But, again, things can change pretty quickly if you start putting some losses on the board or something like that. My next question being, again, in that regard with the offseason, do you think the culture that Matt Rhule wants, do you think he's been successful in installing that culture? I would say, again, at least from my perspective, it feels a little bit different than it maybe did with Frost or with Riley.
Yeah, I don't know that it's fair to compare the different coaching staffs because they all have different styles, and they all wanted different things, emphasized. And obviously for Matt Rhule, one of the things that means a lot to him and the staff is, as you mentioned, culture. And it's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's why they lived in the dorms for a couple of weeks during fall camp and even preceding fall camp, just the way that this team conducted themselves, behind closed doors, in the classroom. Matt Rhule is very proud of the fact that the Nebraska football team had the highest GPA in the program's history this past spring. That means a lot. Going to class, eating the right things, having good attendance in all their weightlifting sessions. And then not only going to those weightlifting sessions, but Nebraska took on some completely new behaviors and habits and emphasis in the weight room, and that's all a part of Corey Campbell's hiring and being in charge of Nebraska strength and conditioning. So all of those things kind of play into the fact that Matt Rule doesn't let things just happen. They are all with intent, and we've seen so many examples of that. And the meaning behind the intent in every instance is to have the culture that he wants, where there is a spirit of accountability, commitment toward one another, and then also just doing things right.
Chase, I'm going to play a soundbite here from Coach Rule. This came from his press conference he had on Friday, and I want you to kind of just give me your reaction to this sound.
I'm confident that we're going to play hard. I'm confident that we're going to be a physical team. I'm confident that if things don't go well early, that we're not going to panic. I'm confident that if things do go well early, we're not going to celebrate. You know what I mean? Like I think our guys understand that this is a 60-minute game and this is a 12-game season. And I'm confident we'll have fun together. You know, my wife, she knows me really well, obviously, right? And she said to me, she said, "No, you're not going to be all stressed out, are you? Like, go have fun." And this is the type of team you can go have fun with. Like, you really can. You know, like, I've had some other teams, like, I'm like, you know, on top of everything. This is the type of team you can go have fun with. So I'm going to be loose, and I'm going to go play. And, you know, what better thing to go play an opponent like this, you know, that goes to bowl games every year and has success. And so it'll be a great way to test ourselves. But, you know, again, going back to Steve's question about late in the game and all those things, you know, we're going to be a team. I don't know when. We're going to be a team that plays our best football in the fourth quarter.
So, Chase, again, he talked about fourth quarter there. Again, talked about fourth quarter again today in his press conference. What do you make of that soundbite there from Coach Rule?
Yeah, well, I think it's just a testament to the culture he's already kind of created here, but also just a lot of, you know, confidence in trusting his players. He kind of has, I guess in the best way to say it, like, he's got a short leash with players, and I think what that in turn, players buying into the system, and there were some even older guys who said, like, it was almost easier for freshmen to adapt to Rule because he had so many different things than some of the guys that have been within the program from the Frost era. So I think players are bought in, and now you're getting to a point where they've done all the hard work, they've done countless reps where they can go out and have fun and kind of enjoy each other. You saw that with some of the pranks put out by Husker Football Online. You saw that from just kind of the camaraderie in the dorms. So I think this is a team that's really strong together. Now, whether that translates to actual play on the field is kind of what Rule is hinting at in that soundbite. Like, you know, not answering the full question. Like, we don't know exactly what this team's going to look like, but him saying that he's confident that they're going to have fun is a very good sign and something that I think fans should look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So moving on from, again, culture questions, I want to ask Kevin about the offense. Again, obviously, Jeff Sims, transfer quarterback from Georgia Tech. He's QB1 after Casey Thompson transfers out. Sounds like Matt Rule wants to run the ball. How much Jeff Sims is a part of that, how many design quarterback runs there actually are, still to be seen. What are your thoughts on Jeff Sims leading this team offensively and running the ball, and how key is it to be able to do that successfully to have a successful outcome?
Jeff Sims' success this season is going to largely hinge upon how the offensive line performs, and this is a veteran group. Among the 5 projected starters, they have more than 100 career starts of college football. That includes Ben Scott, who transferred in from Arizona State, and he's the #1 center for Nebraska. If they can protect Jeff Sims, I think he can very easily hit that 65% completion percentage goal, which the coaching staff has placed upon him. The challenge with Jeff Sims will be to know Marcus Satterfield's offense, and also how good is he situationally. Given the fact that he has played multiple seasons as a starter at Georgia Tech, that would lead you to believe that he should be improved in the situational awareness, when to tuck and run on a third down or when to just check the ball down early on a drive. So I think that Jeff Sims might have a really, really good year. And surprising or maybe not surprising, he has even shown up on some Heisman boards, like way down the list.
Ooh.
But he's a dual threat guy, and look at who won the Heisman Trophy last year and the last several years, Caleb Williams. The dual threat quarterbacks, if you have the right pieces around you, you can be a very effective quarterback. And Nebraska, you have to roll the clock back a little ways to get to somebody that maybe has the explosiveness of Jeff Sims. I think Adrian Martinez early in his career would be the most recent comparison, but Jeff has more experience than Adrian did in year 1 and year 2. And Jeff has a bigger arm than Adrian did. He's a big guy, too. I think he's durable for the Big Ten. So I'm pretty high on Jeff Sims, but I'm still yet very curious to see how he does once this season gets rolling. And while I think the offensive line should do a fairly good job of protecting him, the other side of the question regarding Jeff Sims is who's catching the football? And one of the weakest positions on Nebraska's roster may be at wide receiver. They don't have too many they don't have a Trey Palmer this year.
Nope.
They don't have a J.D. Spielman. They don't have a Brandon Riley or a Nate Swift. They have a bunch of guys that are unproven. They have some experience, but when it's 3rd and 7, as of right now, when it's 3rd and 7, who's getting the football? Right now, we don't know. Maybe after Thursday, we know that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda is the guy. But right now, it's really a big mystery. So, Jeff Sims, we can say he's going to throw for X number of yards, X thousand number of yards. But if he doesn't have the right guys to catch the football, that's going to limit his ceiling. So let's see how Nebraska and Malachi Coleman could work himself into the conversation. They need Marcus Washington to be healthy. He will go to Minnesota. I don't know that he's going to start, but he is somebody that has legitimate college experience and a year under his belt at Nebraska. So who's catching the football? I think that goes hand in hand with the Jeff Sims production conversation.
I 100% agree. And Chase, while Kevin mentioned, again, wide receivers maybe being an unknown at this point for this team, one thing that I guess I would say is not unknown is that running back room where they have 3 guys. I think that Matt Rule would feel pretty comfortable sending out there to start, plus a 4th guy, a young guy, Emmett Johnson, who's going to be returning kickoffs, it sounds like, according to Rule after his press conference today. What do you make of that running back room? Do you think there might be like a 1,000-yard rusher in there somewhere, or is this going to be more of a committee and we're going to see, maybe 3 guys with 500-600 yards apiece by the end of the year?
Yeah, well, I think Matt Rule and Nebraska fans would love to have another 1,000-yard rusher, and there's been some historic running backs come through Nebraska, but, I would kind of lean more running back by committee. Maybe Gabe Ervin is going to step up and be the guy. Obviously, Anthony Grant, we know what he can do on the field, and he's explosive, but he's been fumbling in practice, and that slides him to the number 3 running back in Ramir Johnson, seeing work in that 3rd down pass-catching back role. But if Gabe Ervin just kind of explodes on the scene, they use the fullback, then I think there could be a 1,000-yard rusher, and it would be Gabe Ervin. But you do look at this running back room as with more faith than the receiving room, for sure. Just because, Gabe Ervin is a guy that had a lot of promise in the beginning of his Nebraska career and now finally putting it all together and staying healthy in camp. And then Anthony Grant is kind of in a prove-it-self role that maybe if he's only getting 5 to 10 carries a game, when he gets the ball, he might be even more explosive because he's getting limited touches. And then, as you mentioned, Emmett Johnson returning kicks. I think that's a great role for him, a way to get the ball into somebody's hands, someone that's younger and kind of in the back of the depth chart. So we'll have to see what he can do for him.
And I have, we'll listen here real quick. This is Gabe Ervin from last week's press conference, again, talking about being named the starting running back, dealing with injuries. So let's listen to Gabe Ervin here.
After that first year, I kind of got it like, okay, you got to lean on each other, lean on guys, and just like, taking it a step up where like every time I touch the field, it could be taken away from you at any time. So I just don't take the field for granted. I think about I get to do this, not like I got to do this. I get to do this because everybody else don't have a opportunity to do these things. So I take practice and take everything. Every time I put my helmet on, I get to do this. Instead of I got to do this. It's a big difference. So you don't take everything for granted. And you wear that in like it's like, the standard, man. Like, I think of a whole different perspective, since I got hurt. I really have a strong will to do things,
Kevin, what do you make of that soundbite? Again, very grateful attitude there coming out of Gabe Ervin.
Sounds like he's been reading John Gordon books. A guy that is all about encouraging individuals and finding their passion. Gabe Ervin's a bruising back. I think he's very humble in the fact that he emerges fall camp as Nebraska's top running back. I don't want to rule out Anthony Grant so quick. I think that he could become the forgotten guy in a hurry, especially if Gabe Ervin gets a lion's share of the carries against Minnesota. But Anthony Grant, keep in mind, last year, Nebraska's not had a rusher hit 1,000 yards since Devine Azigbo, and Anthony Grant was over 900.
He was close.
He was close to hitting 1,000. He had a really productive year, but for this coaching staff, you can't turn the football over.
No.
And that doesn't mean Gabe Ervin is immune to it, too. Mm-hmm. When he starts seeing a maroon jersey across the way, they're coming for the football. So I quickly think that it might be more of a committee situation this year. And if you have a committee, it's harder to get to the 1K mark. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And plus, Matt Rule even said in his final thoughts before the team departs for Minnesota that he has to have Ramir Johnson on the field. And Ramir is the most experienced of all the I-backs.
Yeah.
He is just so versatile. I'm a huge Ramir Johnson fan. He can catch the football. He's not afraid to stick his nose in there and block a blitzing linebacker, and he's gone through a lot.
It feels like he's been here for like 8 years.
He's gone through a lot as a Nebraska football player, and I think there's a lot of people within the fan base that are pulling for Ramir Johnson to have a really nice season.
Kevin, defensively now, on the defensive side of the football, you look at single-digit jerseys. 8 of the 10 went to defensive players. So a lot of those black shirts that they just handed out earlier this week, they're lining up on defense. I think there's been some talk this preseason that maybe the defense could be the strength of this team. A lot of experience in the secondary defensive line. Seems like guys like Nash Hutmacher, Blaze Gunnerson maybe stepping up, some newcomers, MJ Sherman, Prince Will. I'm not even going to try and say his last name. And then
I'm not either.
Cameron Lenhart as well. Yeah, Cam Lemhart as well. What do you make of the defense? What do you make of Tony White's 3-3-5 system?
Well, I think the defense is naturally always ahead of the offense when there is a schematic change or a new offense is being installed. It just takes longer to learn an offensive playbook than a defensive playbook because there's just so many nuances and intricacies with how to run an offense. Defense, it's not as simple as see ball, get ball, or see ball carrier and hit ball carrier. But in a way, when it all comes down to it, that's what defense is all about. Flying to the football, sticking your nose in there, and bringing a guy to the ground.
That's right.
So the defense just always seems to have an expedited training camp, no matter where it's at, no matter what level, when there is a coaching change or a coordinator change or a schematic change. With that said, Nebraska has a lot of guys on defense that have played a lot of football. And you look specifically in that defensive back room. Quinton Newsome may be one of the best defensive backs in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Tony White has even said as much. He might be one of the top guys in the league. And I think Quinton probably has an NFL future in him as well. Malcolm Hartzog got some very valuable playing time last year as a freshman, and kudos to the previous coaching staff for putting Malcolm Hartzog out there because even though the season didn't go the way Nebraska wanted it to go, at least there were players that benefited from those game reps in a season that it did not amount to a bowl game. And the first person that comes to my mind is Malcolm Hartzog. He's back for his sophomore year. Great kid, one of the smartest guys on the team. And so Malcolm Hartzog might make a huge jump from year 1 to year 2. I know we've only focused on 2 guys, but if you look across the defense, they have veteran guys in key spots. We just talked about the corners. How about middle linebacker? Luke Reimer. He might end up number 2 on Nebraska's career tackles list. And then up front, Ty Robinson. He's been here multiple years and has been through the ringer as well. So the defense not only has the advantage over the offense just based on how camp unfolds with a new scheme, but also they have the personnel that allows that to possibly be the strength of the team. I'm not saying that they're going to limit Minnesota to under 14 points in the season opener, but I'm saying this unit does have the potential to create a lot of havoc. I think specifically this defense will be much better at taking the football away than the last 4 or 5 defenses we've seen out of the Nebraska football program.
Yeah, that would be a really nice change to see.
I think they'll create more fumbles.
Yeah.
I think they'll get more interceptions. I just think that there's going to be a different attitude you'll maybe notice with this group. And some of that is Tony White's 3-3-5 scheme. Some of it is guys that are veteran guys who have been through Big Ten football, and they think less and they just go play more.
Yeah, and Chase, I think we'll find out pretty quickly. Minnesota's going to line up. Their line is probably bigger than the Green Bay Packers line. They're going to have multiple tight ends, fullback, and they're going to run it right at you. So again, the players have said they're ready to maybe hit another team instead of their own team. They're going to get hit in the mouth pretty quick when they line up against Minnesota.
Yeah, going back to talk about the defense a little bit, I think it's a balance of how the offense maybe has had some rust or just a little bit of quirks that makes the defense look better in fall camp. But also, kind of to say what Kevin's point is, I think Tony White's defense is something that's pretty adaptable and allow the players that have experience or already are good enough on the field. Now it's just about converting it to that new scheme. And you look at Syracuse last year where Tony White came from. They held opponents to under 24 points average across the entire season. And I watched some Syracuse games. Their offense was kind of abysmal and almost hard to watch at times, that the defense was winning the games. And I think for Nebraska to win some of these close games in the Big Ten that is competitive and tough, I think it's going to be the defense that pushes them over the edge, and a defense that has a lot of experience across the board and getting SEC transfers like Chief Borders and MJ Sherman that really can elevate it to the next level. I think the defense is going to be exciting.
That's a really good point by Chase there. Bringing up Chief Borders and MJ Sherman, I think Nebraska really upgraded from the transfer portal defensively with those two guys, because MJ and Chief, both big guys, both with legitimate college experience. And I think the biggest point with those two individuals in particular, they're going to rush the quarterback. And Nebraska's pass rush has really lacked over the last 5 years. This is a defense that I think just has a higher ceiling to get to the quarterback than some of the previous years. And it doesn't have to come from the edge. I think Nash Hutmaker is capable of doing that. And plus moving Ty Robinson from nose guard to D end. I mean, how many D ends have the frame of Ty Robinson? And he's good on his feet. He's 6'6", 310. Robinson's a junior. So, he was typically thought of as an interior defensive lineman. But now with this scheme, they're able to move him to allow Nash to play in the middle. And you're gonna occupy maybe multiple offensive linemen to try to block Ty Robinson, because he's a big guy that can move. And that should hopefully free up an alleyway to bring pressure off the edge with MJ, with Chief, or perhaps Blaze Gunnerson if you line it up right.
Yeah, and I think, Chase, you have a guy like Nick Henrich and linebackers, really experienced guys that are going to be finding gaps in this defensive line with guys like Nash and Ty clogging up some of those offensive linemen.
Yeah, and I think that rover position is a really interesting spot to look at with Isaac Gifford and playing downhill and kind of stopping the run. I think while the cornerbacks have a ton of experience and the passing game will be a key for the defense to stop, I think you look at the Big Ten, this is smash mouth, not high-scoring football that likes to run the ball across a lot of the teams in the Big Ten. And so I think that's going to be even more important, to your point, filling those gaps and just kind of taking advantage of, the defensive line occupying multiple linemen at a time.
So, Kevin, moving over to special teams, it was announced today, Rule said Tristan Alvano will start as kicker, beating out Team of Bleak Road, at least for now. Again, he's a freshman. We've talked about this earlier in one of our conversations. He's kicked in high school. He's kicked well in high school. He's got a big leg, but he's never kicked in college. He's never kicked in front of 90,000 or however many it's going to be in Memorial Stadium. So that might be a position to continue to watch as the year goes on.
Matt Rule said age is not an excuse, and even brought up the point that some of these freshmen like Tristan Alvano, they're old enough to go serve our country overseas. So if they're old enough to do that, they're old enough to kick a football in front of 90,000 people. So, and it's not uncommon for a freshman to serve as a starting kicker across college football or in the Power 5. It sometimes is uncommon for a freshman to start on the offense or defensive line in Power 5 college football. You think about this. The kicker, you hope they don't get touched all season. It's not physical what they do. So much of it is emotional and mental. And we know physically Tristan Alvano is capable of hitting 40 and 50-yard field goals. He's got a bigger leg than Timmy Bleekrode. So is this a risky personnel choice by the coaching staff? Maybe. But if you look at potential, and what is Matt Rule doing this year? He's building for what? The future. What is Tristan Alvano? The future.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things that make sense for Tristan Alvano to have this role. And if he struggles, you have a great 1B in Timmy Bleekrode. Unfortunately, Bleekrode's in a challenging spot, and he knew that. You know, one of the first practices that we got to conduct interviews with Nebraska football players during fall camp, Bleekrode was among the gentlemen that came out to chat with reporters. And he talked about the friendly nature of the competition and how he's just trying to focus solely on himself and his skill set and, you know, not let the quote-unquote position battle get to him. So Bleekrode's got to stay ready. Keep in mind, in what was it, 2018, Nebraska went through, what, 6 kickers that year?
I think they eventually ended up with someone from the student section at one point.
I mean, that was very outlandish and very, very rare. But it is not uncommon for there to be multiple kickers used within a season. So Alvano's number 1, Bleekrode's number 2. That decision goes almost all the way up to kickoff for Nebraska's season opener. And then kickoff-wise, they haven't said who's going to do that. It could be Bleekrode. It could be Alvano. I honestly think it's going to be Brian Buschini. Buschini started training on that with this new coaching staff because he knows if he's a punter that can also do kickoffs, it increases his value as he looks forward into a potential career in the NFL.
And Chase, so I want to ask you this question. We talked already about Emmett Johnson, Ramir Johnson being your return guys on kickoff. And the one thing that I think will either drive a lot of Husker fans crazy or it'll make them really happy is he said, we are not going to fair catch kickoffs. If you catch it, you know, at the 12, you are not fair catching it. They want you. He wants those guys to run and try and break a return.
Yeah, well, and at times you have to look at it like analytically. Are you going to get better odds at just taking the fair catch and going to the 25? And this is it's a question at hand, right? And it's also, situationally, time left in the game. Maybe if you're coming down to a 2-minute drill, maybe you don't do that. But it is exciting to hear that just because it's kind of going back to that traditional football days. But I think, that's kind of there's more risk there, but, Matt Rule is taking risks. We see it with Alvano, and we see it with some of even putting Emmett Johnson as the kick returner, right? And any quick mistakes, I think, is going to be a pretty short leash for some of those players, even though there will be growing pains, as we can expect.
When I heard that comment about we are not going to fair catch a kickoff at the 12-yard line, my mind went less to the situation that was being outlined, and it went quickly to, you know what? When Matt Rule believes something, he believes it. I've said that since he got hired here, that there are just some things that he is very firm and confident in, whether it's situational football, whether it's how he conducts the football program, or the standard in which he holds his players to. So this was yet another example. It's like he says, people want to know, like, how important is it to start fast? Forget that. He wants to finish strong. Fourth quarter. Like, ad nauseum, he will tell you what wins football games. Running the football, converting on third downs. What wins football games? Running the football, converting on third downs. And so that's a part of his football DNA. He is very passionate, and he's very confident in that. And so when he says, we're not fair catching the football at the 12-yard line, that's just what he believes in. It's almost like if you have a department store, and then there's like a new fad of how to, like, put the window dressing out there for all the customers that are coming in.
Yeah.
Somebody that just says, you know what, we're not doing that. I don't believe in that. We're going to go with this. We're going to have green tinted windows because you know what? Green tinted windows bring people in. So whether it's wrong or right, it's just what he firmly believes. So Matt Rule likes green tinted windows.
Yeah, there you go. Just another example of him putting his fingerprints on the program.
Yeah, well, and I also think he has a lot of faith in special teams coach Ed Foley. You know, it's a guy that has a ton of experience, and so I think while Rule might have his mark and his stamp and wants to do things certain ways, which everyone's bought into it so far. So unless it doesn't work, you know, right now we're going to believe and I guess drink the Rule Aid, as the fans are saying, right? But you know, with Coach Foley, I think he's a guy that has experience that if things start to like quiver and there is some issues with special teams, he's a guy that is intense. We've seen it in practice that will be able to straighten those mistakes out. So I think I like taking a risk. I like them running out the kicks, and I also like having a freshman kicker starting.
Yep, said, you know, eventually, sometime this season, may not be the first game, they're going to hit. They're going to return something, big return, spark the offense. So we'll see.
Will they?
Well, it could.
We'll see. We will.
It could. Well, I would put more money on a punt return happening than a kick return. I think Billy Kemp IV is a pretty dynamic player in space coming from Virginia. I don't know how he'll be a good receiver, but you know, I think he also could be a pretty decent punt returner.
That just leads me into my next question. Last year, 2022, the whole year, 5 punt returns, 77 yards.
Wait, what?
For Nebraska. 5 punt returns, 77 yards. The whole season.
I am stunned.
I know.
Having been or watched every game and on occasion multiple times.
There was a lot of fair catches last year.
A lot of fair catches and a lot of running away from the football, huh?
And I went back and I looked. This is before your time, Chase. There used to be a guy who played here. His name was DeMornay Pearsonell, and he was an excellent punt returner. His freshman year, he had almost 600 yards and 3 touchdowns punt returns.
Yeah, wow. I mean, we could spend another 5 to 10 minutes just talking about the great punt returners for Nebraska. DeJuan Gross, J.D. Spielman, you know.
Amir Abdullah?
Santino Panico was not one of them. But anyway, that is shocking, I think. Well, keep in mind, they didn't have a special teams coordinator for 4 years.
No.
Which was very bizarre.
So Billy Kemp, again, I think with his history at Virginia, will be a huge step forward in that regard, we hope. So a couple more things before we wrap it up. I wanted to ask you just about the dichotomy of the two programs that are playing on Thursday. Minnesota, PJ Fleck, I think is where I think a lot of Nebraska fans would take what PJ Fleck has built in Minnesota right now. 8-9 wins almost every year, bowl game. They run the ball, big, mean offensive line.
Yeah, they would take it, but would you take all the other shenanigans that go with it?
No, you probably wouldn't. They're probably wouldn't be,
you know,
rowing the boat and all that other nonsense.
Blah, blah, blah. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Because I can't understand everything he says. His words per minute, by the way, PJ Fleck, like off the chart. I would hate to transcribe a PJ Fleck press conference.
Yeah, that would not be fun. But, I mean, again, Nebraska hadn't been to a bowl game in, 5-6 years now? You know, try and win games. And Minnesota is, again, this team that, you know, you can say what you want about PJ Fleck, but they're winning games, they're going to bowl games.
And PJ Fleck is very good in the postseason, too, you know. So this is our moment to give him some credit and his coaching staff that, you know, despite, I guess, how lathered up that program is, and you know, they're just a little extra, to use a word that a lot of the kids use. They are a little extra, but at the end, they win games, and they win in the postseason. And that's one of the things, one of the reasons I think Minnesota has an advantage on Nebraska here. They have a coaching staff that is typically good when given a lot of time to scheme and prepare, that, you know, they perform pretty well. So, I don't know if your question is as simple as, would you take what PJ Fleck has built at Minnesota, or how does what they do compared to what Nebraska is currently doing?
Yeah, it's just an interesting comparison. Again, we're looking at where Nebraska is now versus where Minnesota is now. Again, I think that's kind of the blueprint that Rule wants, is to kind of have his team look a little bit like Minnesota. Run the ball well, do well on third down, both offensively and defensively, and don't beat yourself.
Yeah, and Minnesota is a fairly disciplined team in that regard. Matt Rule, I thought it was really interesting when the conversation started to shift from his team and fall camp into Minnesota prep. He was very quick to compliment PJ Fleck. He's got a lot of respect for that coaching staff and that program, and I even got a sense that there was a hint of a little bit of admiration for the way that they have sustained the ability to run the football, and the way that they have become a black and blue team in the Big Ten West. They are in contention nearly every year in the division, and we've seen some great November ball games that have matched Minnesota and Wisconsin, or Minnesota and Iowa.
All right, so Chase and Kevin, you guys did your preseason special that aired Sunday night. If anyone hasn't seen that, again, you can watch it on 1011, all of our platforms as well as on YouTube. You guys gave some predictions for the season. Chase, you said 7-5.
Yeah, I was being positive, right?
Is he backtracking?
He might. Sounds like he might be trying to.
No, well, so the way I had it, the way I think that the season could easily go had me at 6-6, but I said, maybe a ball will fall their way. Maybe they'll have a punt that lands out at the 1, right? The perfect situation, and they go 7-5. I was just being, glass half full.
Well, the question I want to ask you is, what do you think the ceiling would be for a win total? Not necessarily, again, you said 7-5, but what do you think, again, like you said, something's got to go right, something's got to go their way. What do you think the ceiling is for this team?
Well, just to answer that question, I would start with that. The floor is 4 wins. The floor, that would be the non-con games and, well, not all the non-con games, 2 of the non-con games and then 2 of the Big Ten games, because Colorado is not a guarantee, even though I do think Nebraska will have the better team in week 2. But looking at the ceiling, I would say, I'm not trying to shock Nebraska fans, but I'm probably saying that the ceiling is 7 wins. Maybe 8. I think 8 is stretching it. I think 7 wins would be the ceiling, and it'd be a very good season for year 1 of Rule.
Do you agree?
I think it's 8. I think 8-4. Not to go all crazy here and have everybody blast me on social media. And I, by the way, let's put this out there right now. I'm not saying Nebraska will win 8 games, but to come to that number, like Bill, as you asked that question to Chase, I looked at the schedule and quickly thought, well, what are the games they are, 90% not winning? And I picked 4 of them. So that leaves 8 wins. Ceiling, I think, is 8. 8-4 would be a tremendous season with the first-year coaching staff. Vegas has Nebraska at 6.5, which I think is a great line because that means you're either picking 6-6 or below or 7-5 and above. So I think Vegas is right on where Nebraska truly is. But the 8-4 discussion, the games I think Nebraska has like the 10% or less chance to win would include Michigan, Illinois,
Wisconsin?
Wisconsin.
I'm not buying Wisconsin. They're completely overhauling
in
their
Minnesota.
offensive
Sorry, I skipped
system.
that. I don't think Nebraska is going to beat Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin. I think Nebraska can beat Iowa.
Yeah.
And even if Nebraska loses to Iowa, then maybe they get Wisconsin. So I think that's where like the 8-4 number comes up with. And some people might, be unhappy the fact that I threw Illinois in that discussion. Let me tell you this right now. Illinois might win the Big Ten West. That is a veteran team with a really good offensive and defensive line. Might be one of the best lines in college football. So I think Illinois is going to be a really tough game.
I think a lot of Husker fans have tried to block out what Brett Bielema did to us while he was at Wisconsin, and he's doing the same thing at Illinois. He's getting some big uglies on offensive and defensive lines.
And Nebraska does catch Illinois at a not so good time. They're going to come off the Michigan game, and then they're going to have to go back on the road for a Friday night game. That's just going to be the circumstances surrounding that game are going to be a little bit challenging.
Friday nights in Champaign, I don't think have treated Nebraska well.
They play a lot of Friday night games in Champaign.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
if
about
it's
that.
3rd and 1 of the games on the line, run the football.
Run the ball. Anyone who doesn't remember what that is, that was the old Tommy Armstrong who threw the ball, incomplete pass, and they drove the field 90 yards, and we lost. Nebraska lost.
Yeah.
So, you have something to add?
To talk about Illinois just briefly, I think you look at games that are a little bit more toss-ups, like Purdue and Wisconsin. Those are first-year head coaches just like Rule. I think Illinois is a program that has been doing it the past couple of seasons, and once you kind of get that snowball rolling in the Big Ten, it's just there's not that many one-season wonders, I feel like, as of recent. I think you have these programs that build, and where what Rule wants to do is bring the respect. He said at the Big Ten Media Days, he wants the program to be respected first and then feared. I think, looking at the win total, and 8's a pretty good ceiling, that Illinois game is going to be a tough game, just like Michigan and just like Wisconsin, too.
There are one-year wonders. Look at what Kansas did last year. That's a team that just came out of nowhere with Lance Leopold.
In the Big Ten.
That was the point I was going to make there too, Chase, is that a one-year wonder in the Big Ten, Northwestern has popped some seasons. But again, that was with a coach that had been there for almost 2 decades.
Not there anymore.
He's not there anymore. But the one-year wonders they tend to be more teams that happen to play in the American Conference, UCF, or they're in the MAC, or they're out of the Mountain West. In the Big Ten, that's really tough. It's not saying it won't happen at Nebraska with Matt Rule, but
top to bottom, the league is just
tough.
so good.
And you have to have the right composition to have a successful run in the Big Ten. And what I mean by the right composition, you have to have the right guys up front, and you got to be able to win in cold weather. And those are things that this coaching staff identified from the very beginning when they started to transform some of these guys' bodies and transform some of their makeup of, let's make sure that they feel confident in tough situations.
They had them pushing sleds in the snow in Memorial Stadium back in January.
Just feels like 7 years ago.
It does feel like 7 years ago. Really quickly, just to kind of put a bow on football, again, have to touch on, the news that came out this morning. Tight end Arik Gilbert, arrested early Tuesday morning, breaking into a vape shop near 27th and O. Rule touched on it. Earlier Tuesday morning, we'll go ahead and play his sound for everyone to listen to.
First of all, obviously, I came into work today and got the phone call about Arik. Obviously, really disappointed, really sad for him. When we took Arik, we thought we had we knew we had a good group of people that were going to help him through some of the issues he's dealing with in his life. Have been really proud of the job he had done in the spring and summer. But to be honest, during camp, he's had some struggles. He's been working to overcome them. We have a great group of people here trying to help him. And then, obviously, last night happened. So I don't have a lot of details. You guys probably have more details than me. I got a quick phone call and then went out to the field. So, we'll work through those, as we get more information. But sad and disappointed. Disappointed for him and his family. Disappointed, obviously, for the business owner. And we'll have to just work through it as we move forward.
So this was something, again, we were waiting on an eligibility waiver from the NCAA. We didn't know if he was going to be able to play. Sounds like they've been prepping for the season as if they wouldn't have him. Obviously not a great situation, probably might, I don't know what's going to happen afterwards or what's going to happen now, but sounds like he might not be available for the team for a while.
Yeah, Arik Gilbert was not going to travel with the team to Minnesota. He had been playing on the scout team, as you mentioned, Bill. They were waiting on the NCAA's ruling on his eligibility as he comes over from Georgia, where he just won a national championship. But clearly this is much bigger than football. This is a legal matter, and some of this will be beyond Matt Rule's decision-making. This will go through the top of the athletic department on how to handle somebody that has a legal case on his hands right now.
Yeah. So back to something, just to, again, kind of wrap things up here. I want to touch with both of you, Volleyball Day in Nebraska is tomorrow. John Cook, Merritt Beeson, Becca Alec all spoke today. Again, you can find their interviews on 1011's platforms. Sounds like they're kind of grasping the magnitude of what tomorrow is going to be. Potentially a world record sellout or world record for a women's athletic event. 90,000 people in the stands to watch volleyball. It's going to be pretty incredible to watch.
I've been down there the last couple of days, and just seeing the volleyball court on the football field, and not only that, but they have the entire field covered because they're putting seating down all around. I don't know if you attended the Garth Brooks concert, but this feels more like a concert than a sporting event. And it just so happens that there is a bunch of young ladies between the ages of 17 to 23 that are going to be the stars of the concert. And John Cook's going to be out there on the court. They're having a lot of fun with it, as they should. And every team is taking its turn practicing on the court on Tuesday at Memorial Stadium. I think that is very wise because there are a lot of factors here. Depth perception, sunlight, wind, how the ball moves in the wind. That was something that I think the common volleyball viewer or fan doesn't quite understand, that they're going to use a volleyball that maybe gets pushed by the wind a little bit more when they're outside.
And smoke. There's supposed to be smoke from Canadian wildfires drifting through the area. So, again, how does that, impact players as they're going to be working hard? And, you got to take that all into account.
Well, it's just like when you play a basketball game on an aircraft carrier, right? There's a lot of different factors, and I think, regardless of what the game actually looks like and maybe the quality of play, I think it's just monumental for women's sports and just kind of an opportunity for the public eye to see the Nebraska faithful, but then also just, celebrate volleyball in itself. I think when you get down to the nitty gritty of actually a volleyball game happening, or multiple volleyball games, I should say, there is going to be some challenges, and that's just part of it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a cool event regardless, and I think to get a national spotlight on the Nebraska volleyball team as well as the other programs participating, I think is awesome, and I think as long as they win, they'll be happy.
And Becca Alec spoke today, Kevin. I have never heard Becca Alec speak before. She gave one of the best 10, 11, 12-minute press conferences I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, she's wise beyond her years. She's from Lincoln. She played high school volleyball at Waverly. We, of course, have done multiple stories on Becca, and we've known her for several years before she ever played at Nebraska. And she's just a joy to be around. Very well spoken. My goodness, she does not sound like a 19, 20-year-old. But yeah.
I have a soundbite from her here.
You can't help but smile and laugh. It's just, you get all giddy. It's like a kid on Christmas. It's really hard to put into words because I feel like anything I say won't do it justice. It's such a gift. I mean, beyond blessed. I don't know how else to put it. It's just super cool.
Super cool, what she says.
You said that you really enjoyed that press conference, Bill. When we are at these press conferences, we're typically taking our notes, and anytime we hear something that might be a really good soundbite for a newscast, put a little star by it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, and of Becca Alec's 10 to 12 minutes with the media, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different quotes of her I had stars by. She was just great, and there's just so much excitement and anticipation, and I get the sense from these girls too that even though it's here, it's still not sinking in. They've seen the court. It's still not sinking in that this is going to happen. And let's prepare ourselves all as Nebraska volleyball fans, or you take interest in the program, or it's the local team. This is going to be on Fox News and CNN and CBS National News. This is a national story. This is not just, hey, Nebraska is doing something cool. As Chase mentioned, this is putting a spotlight on the sport. And I said this on the 10 o'clock news last night. I don't know where else in the country they could do something like this and it have the support not only from the team and the coaching staff, but also the administration, the event staff. This is going to be a show, and there's no better place for it to happen within the terms of the sport of volleyball than here in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Absolutely. All right. Our time's almost up here, Chase. Is there anything else you wanted to add, either volleyball day or football coming up on Thursday?
All I'll say is it's going to be a hectic 48 hours. But, for us, it might be very busy. But for the Nebraska fan, I think having a fun volleyball day in Nebraska and then being able to kick your feet up and look to maybe the Huskers get a win on Thursday. So it's just exciting, and it's finally all here, right? We've been talking about it for months.
48 hours. Chase must have forgot there's high school football on Friday.
Yeah, 72 hours.
Wow.
72 hours.
No, I couldn't miss high school football.
All right. Thank you, Chase. We're going to go ahead and put a wrap on the show. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we let everyone go today?
It's here.
It is here.
It's finally here.
I know. Oh, my gosh. I can't believe it. All right. In the 1011 Now streaming studio, this has been the N Report Husker Show. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the 1011 YouTube channel and all the podcast channels that we're on as well. As always, for all the latest news, weather, and sports, keep it tuned to 1011, both on air and online. For Kevin Sjuts, Chase Madison, I am Bill Rentschler. Thanks so much for watching.
You've been listening to the N Report Husker Show from 1011. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the N Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.